Hi, my name is Todd Leonard.
And my name is Herb Montgomery, and we're just talking.
Thanks for clicking the like button, the subscribe button, and the bell icon on our broadcast. We appreciate the help that it gives our visibility, and we hope that it helps you in checking us out on a weekly basis.
So, if you're not familiar with this show, each week, Todd, Leonard, and I take a moment to talk about the upcoming weekend's lectionary reading from the Gospels. Our goal is to talk about those passages in the context of love and inclusion and societal justice. We hope that our talking will be just talking, as in the sense of justice, but that also something we might say as we go back and forth might inspire you alongside with us to do more than just talking. So, Todd, what are we looking at this week?
We continue to be in the Gospel of John. We're in John chapter 15, verses 9 through 17.
Yeah, I think we're stuck in John until Pentecost. Just being, just looking for. I mean, I would love to be wrong on that, but I
I've
really
never looked so much forward to the falling of the Holy Spirit.
I do. I think we're going to be in John for a couple more weeks. So for what it's worth, here we are. I will say that as much as we rag on John or contrast John's gospel, and we compare it with Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and it's so different. The emphasis is different. The theology is different. Um, as much as we critique that difference, I think this week I'm like pro John. This
Oh,
week,
wow. Hold on,
yeah,
really?
this week I love what the Johannine community does with this gospel. I just think they hit it the nail on the head. I think they got it right here. And so I'm looking forward to our discussion. This is one week where I'm like, yeah, John. It may not happen for another year, but 1 out of 12 months in the lectionary. I love this passage.
Oh, man.
So there's some stuff here though that I look at it. I just yeah, let's go through it. So for those familiar with it, this is that it's in that farewell section of
Mhm.
John 15, maybe 14 to it, 15, 16, 17, that farewell
Yep.
uh, section. And Jesus here is saying, as the Father has loved me, so have I loved you. Now remain in my love. If you keep my commands, you will remain in my love. And this command keeps coming up over and over again. He says, I don't treat, I no longer call you servants because a servant doesn't know what his master's business is. Instead, I've called you friends, and you are my friends if you do what I command. And then he continues, he defines that command. And before we define the command here, I just find it interesting that if you keep my commands, you remain in his love, and I'm treating you as friends, not servants. But if you do what I command, only if you do what I command are you my friend. That sounds a lot more like master servant relationship than it
Yeah.
does friend.
Or an imbalanced marriage.
Right. Totally. I mean, in any other friendship, that would be a red flag, wouldn't it?
Yep.
You're only my friend if
Absolutely.
you do what I command you.
Yeah, I don't think my wife would take too kindly to that.
Yeah, I don't have any relationship in my life that would take kindly to this. I mean,
No.
Todd, I mean, if I looked at you and said, "You're my friend if you do what I command."
Well, for you, her, but I'm just, I'd do it for you, man.
No,
I'd,
but
I'd,
see,
I'd, I'd do it for you.
I appreciate it, Todd. You're a nice person. You're nice. I value our friendship even more now in some sycophant, some narcissistic way. But seriously, he just said, I'm not going to relate to you as servant master. I'm going to relate to you as friends, which is kind of a equal. I mean, what it
Yeah.
says to me is there's an egalitarianness to it.
Yeah.
And yet he pulls back in this power structure dynamic, this
Right.
hierarchy of we're just friends if you do what I tell you to, you know?
Hmm. Hmm.
So I don't know what to do with that,
Yeah,
but
I mean, I think we try to redeem that. I think we recognize it for that. It does sound it sounds authoritarian to some degree,
mhm, mhm,
but at the same time, I think if you look at it in the context, and I know you're going to flesh this out in a minute, but you look at okay, let's look at what Jesus commands, and
mhm.
let's and consider both what he commands here in John, and then because we sit at this place where we have four gospels. All right, let's see what he commands in the other gospels, and say, all right, so it's almost like in some way his he's we can redeem it by like comparing it to maybe how we would categorize how America has allies, people who are on its,
Okay,
you're on your side because you support the same democratic values as America and something
okay,
like that. And so we could look at it as if you're if you're if you're about my the work that I'm doing, if you're on board with my mission, by doing the things that matter to me, you're my friends. That's how you know.
yeah,
Um,
that
but
gets us a
that's still
little.
trying to read. That's being a little creative with it for sure. I think we could make kind of an argument that direction.
Yeah, and I like that because if you look at the Gospel of John, if you actually lean into what you're saying, well, what were the actual commands? The commands in John, once again, as we do this every time we talk about John, but once again, the commands in John are just very different than the commands in the synoptic gospels. In
Hmm.
the synoptic gospels, you have love your enemies, you have the command to turn the other cheek, you have the commands not even to be angry with your brother or sister.
Hmm.
You have the command to sell all your superfluous possessions and give them to the poor.
Hmm.
You have the command to love your neighbor as yourself and to treat people, the golden rule to treat others the way you would like to be treated.
Right.
In the Gospel of John, none of those commands exist.
Hmm.
If the only gospel you would have had, which some Christians at this time only had John,
Right.
if John was the only gospel you had, you would never know about those other teachings in the other gospels. There's only one thing, and I looked at it, it's in John 13:34, and it's here in John 15:12 through 17. There's only one thing Jesus ever commands in the book of John to his apostles, to his followers, to those that are going to bear his name. And he actually says it in this week's passage. My command is this: love each other as I have loved you. Love one another. That's the only command in the book of John is love one another. And so what Jesus is saying is if you're all about love and you're trying to live out that love, then you're my friends.
Hmm.
If you're not about love, then you're not my friends. I mean, I'm leaning into what you were saying a minute ago.
Hmm.
When we flesh it out that far, that helps, doesn't it?
Hmm. I think so. Yeah. I mean, I think you. It's like saying it would be similar to saying if you're going to be a community of people, you have the choice of being inclusive or exclusive. And if you choose to be inclusive community, um, that's how I am. So that's we're on the same team. If you're
Mhm.
going to be exclusive, well, that's not where I'm going. And so that's you're not on my team. It's more
Yeah,
of
that's a
yeah, it's
great
kind of
example.
identifying.
That's a great example because inclusion is intrinsically and ironically exclusionary.
That's right.
You know what I mean? It's exclusive
It
in
is.
the sense that it excludes all those people that aren't inclusive.
That's right.
You know what I mean? So there's that kind of self contradiction in it.
Hmm.
And maybe that's what we're bumping into, something of that nature in this passage this week.
Yeah. 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 I
But I
think
think
that's true.
this is where I think, and then like I said, this is where I'm pro John this week, is that if you're going to boil down Jesus's teachings and commands and values down to any one singular thing, which is what the Johannine community is attempting to do here, any one thing, I'm so thankful that they landed on love.
Yeah.
I mean, that's commendable.
Right.
And it's not this gospel about Jesus that says God loves you. It's this
Mm,
gospel that Jesus is teaching, telling us to love each other, to
right.
love one another.
That's right.
So as much as I critique John right here, I think John gets it right.
Yeah.
So, so I applaud John this week. So how can we tie this into justice, societal justice?
Yeah. I think we have to, I think if congregations were willing to be self-reflective, if individual people who say they're followers of Jesus were to engage in critical self-reflection about themselves, I think you need to ask, what is, am I following, um, am I engaged in practices to show my love to God in the sense of directing my energies towards attending worship services, participating in pious practices, joining other Christians in creating safe communities for like-minded individuals, or am I engaged in loving action that benefits others besides myself, um, and benefits marginalized groups within the community? I think we could separate it from those who believe it's all about my individual relationship with God versus my relationship with God is experienced in my loving and serving those uh, who often are different than me.
Mhm. That love includes loving those who are different than ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I want to go backwards a little bit because something you just said just sent me down a rabbit hole as you were
Mm-hmm.
talking in your head. In the synoptics too, Jesus is asked, what is the greatest commandment? And he quotes from the Torah and says, the greatest commandment is love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul. And the second is like it, love your neighbor as yourself.
Mm-hmm.
That pair, that duo isn't in the Gospel of John either. That's what just struck me. As you were saying, some Christian congregations will be about love, but it's all about loving God. Nowhere is the command in John to love God, even.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Only that is interesting to me because the only command John gives us from the mouth of Jesus is love each other.
Mm-hmm.
Love each other. And the other Johannine sacred text from that community, there is so much emphasis put on loving one another. How can you say
Yeah,
you love God if you don't love your brother and sister? How can you say
right.
you love God who you haven't seen if you don't even love your brother and sister who you can see? You know, there's this emphasis of
Yeah.
priority where the other gospels prioritize loving God, and the way we express that love towards God is loving our neighbor. Here it's
Mm-hmm.
saying, love your neighbor because
Right.
that really is it. And if you love one another, that says you're of God. That's enough. That says you love God, and everything
Yeah.
else follows after that. Where
Right.
one, yeah, just again, it's a subtle difference in the Gospel of John, but it's a fascinating difference to me.
Right.
Here, it's one command, not two, one, and it's not love God, it's
Yeah.
love each other. And what does that look like? And to circle back around to what you were just saying, that even includes loving those who are part of our human family, who are connected to whether we like it or not, who are part of ourselves,
Hmm.
even those that are different from us,
Hmm.
because we're still connected to them.
Yeah.
We still share humanity with them.
Yep.
So, I mean, there's so many great sayings out there. I think of Cornel West, who said, justice is what love looks like in public.
Hmm.
I think of Dr. Emily Towns, Reverend Dr. Emily Towns, who said, if you begin with the idea that God loves everyone, then justice isn't very far behind.
Hmm.
You've got these great thinkers of our time that have seen that at the heart of any societal justice movement, any concern for what people are experiencing materially, um, in their world, at the heart of that is love. It's this principle of love. It's not a sentimental theology of love.
No.
It's a love with, boots on the ground,
Hmm.
love in blue jeans, so to speak. It's a
Yep.
love that has action. It's a love that says, if I'm going, and if you're really going to love others and love people and be a lover of human beings the way that Jesus loved them, then you can't ignore what they're suffering as a result of the way society is shaped. You
Hmm.
can't be for policies and politicians that are going to harm people. I think of here in West Virginia. I don't know if it's like that this where you're at, Todd, but here in West Virginia, there are so many political ads on television right now.
Hmm.
And this is Appalachia. So 99% of them are GOP run ads.
Hmm. Hmm.
And it seems like here in West Virginia, the Republicans are just trying to out trans the other guy. Like this
Hmm.
guy says he's going to protect us from trans people, and this guy
Hmm.
comes on and says I'm going to protect you from trans people even more, and it's just one anti-trans ad after the other. And I mean I'm not exaggerating. I mean
Yeah.
that's the hot button here in West Virginia. One of the hot buttons, I
Yeah.
guess.
I think it's one of the top hot buttons in many places,
and
including
and I
here.
and these kids that I know in the local public school system that are trans, they're not going to hurt you.
No.
They're going to, if anything, they're going to hurt themselves or hurt.
Yeah.
They're more in danger of hurting themselves than they are hurting anybody else.
That's
But
right.
but but here they are being thrown under the bus, right? So that one Republican can out Republican the other one.
Yeah.
How is that? And then Christians, at least in my area, eat that stuff up. How can you be a person of love and support garbage like that? That's going to hurt kids.
Yeah. I mean that's the question. I mean, you have to ask yourself is if especially for people who say they are part of the pro-life movement, um, how are you not pro the life of teenagers and young adults who are in the process of determining and understanding who they are and trying to align their psychology with their physicality and why why would we throw 1 to 2% of the population under the bus and make them the boogeyman when we could say, you know what, even if I don't understand this completely, darn it, these are kids,
That's
and
right.
we got to look out for these kids. Even if we got to, we feel like we need to have a dialogue about it or something, but we're not gonna throw these kids under the bus
For our political
for a
goals at
political
very
purpose.
minimum.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I got a thing in the mail today, Todd, and you brought up pro-life. I got a thing in the mail today where one of these politicians is saying, right on the handbill, it
Hmm.
says pro God, pro life, pro gun,
Right.
pro Trump.
Yeah.
Oh, pro coal, pro Trump. And I thought, do we not get the contradiction between those? So, I just pro life. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
To love, if we're going to follow this command to love one another, I mean, that's the question. And I'm not asking you this, Todd. I'm asking me this, and I'm rhetorically asking everyone this. What does that love look like economically? What does it look like politically? What does it look like socially? We can design a theology of love all day long, but our beliefs, until those beliefs about love are put into practice and how we relate to one another, and that's so important too, because when we try to put them into practice, by it's kind of like the laboratory. When you try to practice whatever you think love is, you start to see, oh, that idea of love is kind of dysfunctional. That's kind of harmful.
Hmm.
And even your understanding of love grows,
Develops and evolves.
develops. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I think it's so vital that we not just say, we're a loving community or we're all about love. We have to define what that love looks like, put it into practice, and learn from that practice. So I mean, yeah, love. What does love look like? That's my rhetorical question. How does love relate to those around us? What does it look
Yeah.
like in society?
And that absolutely has implications for how we vote, how we engage with our elected officials. Um, and then, but even in the context of in places like West Virginia or Louisiana that are more red than blue, um, and so you say maybe I don't, my vote, I'll vote, but it seems like it doesn't have much effect because I
Kind of like
seem to be in
spitting
the
in the wind.
minority. Um, I know for you, Herb, that doesn't keep you from engaging in local things, and I would just reiterate. I don't know if I've said it here. I've said it in other contexts with other groups of people. I'm a huge believer in local politics. There can be real movement on stuff that can happen in your local city government with working with local nonprofits. They can have a tremendous impact on the people in your community, even if the state or the country seems to be running in the opposite direction of you. um, there's so many opportunities at the local level to lean into that love and have an impact on local policy, on local government structure, and in local organizations and nonprofits.
Yeah, I love that. That's what loving one another looks like locally.
And I think too often we feel overwhelmed by the what we may
The
appear
national causes.
the national causes and the global causes. It seems so far beyond. What can one person do? What can one Doesn't mean you can't engage at those levels, but if you want to know the power of one person, you can still see that at the local level. One person, I'm telling you, in a small nonprofit, one person who's engaged and joins in can re-energize a nonprofit. One person who becomes a fly in the ointment at City Hall and keeps pushing on them starts to get some traction over time. One person in these contexts really can make a difference for love.
I love that. I love that. About about a decade ago now, we were involved. My family and I were involved with a push here in West Virginia to try to expand first in local municipalities, but even for our state. Eventually, it would grow to the goal was that it would grow to state level, to expand our non-discrimination ordinances to include, well, in talking about public services like restaurants and housing and employment, for
Hmm.
those non-discrimination ordinances to include the LGBTQ community.
Hmm.
And there was a time, and I'm going to be very honest here, there was a time in my Christian walk where I was pretty apolitical, and I didn't realize at that time in my own evolution that choosing to be apolitical is a political position.
Absolutely.
It's a position of privilege. It's usually, well, it is. When you choose to be apolitical, you're just siding with whoever is
You're
in.
saying things are going pretty good for you, so you don't need to get involved.
Right, right. You're casting your vote. When you
Hmm.
don't vote, you're casting a vote with the status quo.
Right.
So I was like, but never has it been impressed upon me more than about a decade ago, where I would go to our state capitol when we were trying to push this ordinance, this ordinance expansion, and there were some politicians in office who were so receptive, and you could have decent conversations with them
Mhm.
there on a state level. You're talking about local politics, and I know that's city as well,
Mhm.
but you could actually. And now there's such a super majority in this state that those conversations we were having, I would give so much to have those kinds of conversations that we were having a decade ago, to have
Mhm.
those kind of conversations now,
Mhm.
because now there's just no openness to even the topic. There's no openness. There's no discussion. They don't. There's just no. There's no willingness to dialogue. So who you push to put into office, it may not solve the problem,
Mhm.
but it does make it easier or harder to
Right.
solve the problem.
Right.
And so, yeah, it's so, if we're going to be people about love, it can't just be profession, or it can't be just talking. There's a plug
Oh,
for you.
well, hey,
it's
well said.
it's got to be socially engaged. It's got to be, for it to be relevant and practical. It has to be socially engaged,
Yeah. And
whatever
not
that looks
social
like for you.
media. I mean, only social media
Right.
engaged. If you're just posting clever memes, you're really not accomplishing much.
Yeah. Coming from someone who tries to post clever memes.
No, you're just advertising what's coming up next in your ministry. If you do post a meme, it's usually more substantive, Herb. You're all
It's all
right.
right. It's all right. I'm gonna stop
And
posting
if
memes
you do
now.
other things besides that, if you were
I do.
only
I do. I
posting,
do. That's true.
then
That's true. That's
then
true.
I would give you a hard time. But you're
All
doing
right.
more than
All right. All right. I'll take that. All right. You got anything else with this passage this week, Todd? I think, again, I love this passage. I mean, if we could talk about this every week that we have to look at John, I would love it.
that. Well,
Love
I
it.
haven't looked ahead to see what's next week, but we'll hope it's not too much worse.
All
But
right.
no, I think that's all I got this week. Did you have anything you wanted to share about Renewed Heart Ministries?
Let me just share a quick update. I'm just going through the files real quick to see the audiobook, for those of you who have been watching this show, the audiobook Finding Jesus, Fundamentalist Preacher Discovers the Social, Political, and Economic Teachings of the Gospels, is available on Amazon. It's available on paperback, Kindle, and now on Audible as an audiobook. We had Jeff Moon on last week talking about, who's the narrator for the audio, but that's why I don't do audiobooks right
Yeah,
there.
clearly.
The narrator. And yesterday, be looking out for this. We'll maybe post a link, or I'll tell you about it once it's available. But I got a chance yesterday to sit on a panel with about 5 people talking about the rise of white Christian nationalism here in the United States right now. And one of those 5 people was none other than Jim Wallace. And so I'll share a little bit about that when it was recorded yesterday, but it should be coming out soon. When it does, I'll let people know how to get a hold of it. But yeah, I think that's it right now. That's going on with Renewed Heart Ministries. I want to say, and I hope to do this I hope I remember to do this every week. That's how important it is to me. But I just want to say a special thank you to all of you out there who are supporting the work of Renewed Heart Ministries. If any of you would like to join them in supporting the work of Renewed Heart Ministries, you can go to renewedheartministries.com and click donate. But especially, I want to just thank all of you out there who value the work that we do, and you support Renewed Heart Ministries, which enables Todd and I to do shows like this and all the myriad of other things that Renewed Heart Ministry does. But just thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Thanks for your support. All right, that's what I've got this week, Todd.
Okie doke. Thanks for joining us, everybody. We will look forward to seeing you soon. You
That's
take
right.
care.
Tune in next week for another thought provoking discussion. Take care, everyone.